Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, red.olaughlin. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Today's program is The Wise Ones, and I'm honored to have a chef today, something that we've never had before on the show. She also lives in the Houston area. I know her very well. She's also a host on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and I'd like to introduce you to Ricki Mckenna.
Wait a minute.
I thought Ricki was here, but maybe not. Anyway, today's show, there she is.
Hi, Red.
Can I get an audio check just to make sure I can hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Can the rest of the world hear me?
If I can hear you, the rest of the world can hear you because we have a great production engineer backing this thing up. So we're in good shape.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, as I was mentioning a minute ago, you're the very first chef that we've ever had on this show. We've had a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, all sorts of businesses. We've had authors, lots of authors. You kind of click off the list on many of them, but you also have one little block called chef. Who taught you how to cook?
Oh, my gosh. Grandma, mom, late husband, kids.
Oh, so you're just kind of an all-interpretive kind of person. Somebody has something, teach me how to do that.
Well, and I love reading, and I like to read, believe it or not, I like to read recipes and cookbooks and books about cooking. And actually, I have a book, I'm not sure where it is, but it's the science of cooking, the science of food. Fascinating. And I am totally a believer, and not just as a chef, but as a certified nutritionist, in the fact that food is what keeps us not only alive, but healthy and prevents disease and really lights up our life.
Well, that kind of leads into your pseudonym a little bit, doesn't it? Ricki McKelty?
Yes. Yeah, it's really funny. Just as a side note, I'm 79 and I just changed my Medicare program, the supplemental thing. It took them over a month to decide to accept me because I didn't have any diseases or conditions. And it's rare, apparently, that someone in my age doesn't have at least one something. I said, okay, I need eye drops. But other than that, no, I'm fine. Thank you, God.
You're in that same boat as my wife. She has nothing, and they always astounded. But it's one of those things, you lead a good life, you know how to lead a good life, and then you follow your own advice.
Yeah, exactly. It's the old, what is it, Doctor Heal Thyself? Something along those lines.
So you started learning how to cook. What did you learn? How did you specialize? And then how did things develop over time as you started reading cookbooks and things? Tell us a little bit about the journey.
Well, I learned that I really prefer stainless steel cookware to most that's out there, although I have found some of the nonstick cookware that I prefer the ceramic to. It doesn't bleed and it doesn't leach anything into your foods as some of the earlier stainless or nonstick pots and pans did. I've learned how not to do certain things like burn foods that aren't supposed to get charcoaled. And seriously, I've learned how to moderate and modulate the temperatures for foods. how to combine foods, how to appreciate spices, and herbs. Absolutely herbs. I go a little bit nuts, pun intended, for herbs, and I love nuts. I love food, basically. But what I've learned is there are certain liberties that you can take with certain foods and spices and condiments and so forth to create different tastes that work together. That's fun. That's kind of part of the fun that I have in the kitchen because I love experimenting. Um, and I learned that you can double duty or triple duty on certain things. This morning I did a lesson on zucchini pancakes, which can be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They can be a side. They can be actually a substitute for something like hash browns if you want to cook them, cook some eggs to go with them. And then I took some acorn squash, opened it up, and I took chopped sirloin and added a bunch of things to it, like onions and scallions. And instead of using rice, I prefer to use bulgur. It's a little better grain as far as I'm concerned. It's gluten free, but it adds fiber and a whole bunch of stuff to some ground sirloin. I stuffed the acorn squash with it, put it in the oven to bake, and then I made a couple of hamburgers because to me, hamburger, just plain old hamburger, is yeah. So my burgers have flavor. Those are the kind of things that I love learning. I see you're giggling. hmm
My father-in-law, when he was alive, he was also a butcher at times, and when he retired, he would get a half a cow and cut it up. And I think the first time we did that, we split a half a cow with him. He says, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "Hamburger." And so that's what we had, half a quarter of a cow cut up as hamburger.
Oh, good grief.
And the ironic part was our neighbors next door. She was English, she was Scottish. They had 4 boys, and they didn't eat hamburgers, fast food or anything. But they come over to our house, they'd have a hamburger, and they would just go crazy about it because it actually had flavor.
Yeah.
And we don't think about that sometimes. There's burgers that I love that don't exist anymore. There's some places I rarely go to anymore because they just don't taste good.
Right.
But if we're working with raw materials, which you work with a lot, there are a lot of things, as you say, herbs and spices that can enhance those flavors. But it's also the cooking method can enhance those flavors too.
Exactly.
And with cooking, and let's stay with that for a while rather than baking, we have a lot of leeway on what you can do with cooking. I love to cook. And so I always have something I'm trying to improve upon. Okay, well, that's what the recipe says. But what if I do this? I mentioned to you the other night, I've been making a lot of apple strudel. And so I've been changing the percentages of the ingredients and whether I cook it in the oven in phyllo dough or whether I cook it in puff pastry or whether I cook the filling. And then, there's nothing in there talking about certain spices. So I add cloves and nutmeg and a couple other things in there that's probably not in there, but I'm doing that just like adding salt to enhance the flavor. And so there's lots of things cooking can do. Yeah, maybe that dish doesn't taste right to you, but experiment. I think you're really big on keep changing little things until it actually turns out to be a big thing that, hey, this is really good.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I cook. When I first started the cooking shows that I do on Thursdays, I called it pan-tuitive cooking, which hinted towards intuitive cooking. And I think that once people get accustomed to being in the kitchen and aren't afraid of cooking, that if you use your intuition, you can really figure out certain things that work together. And if they don't work, you don't do it the next time. But intuitively, I seem to be able to put things together. And I also learned from everybody around me, my neighbors. I have a neighbor who's from Colombia, and she seasons things a little differently. I once had a housekeeper from Mexico, and she taught me that if you add a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice to chicken soup, good old chicken soup, with the carrots and onions and celery and so forth, that gives it an incredible amount of flavor that's a little bit different, and it's really delicious. So it's a learning process all the time, which I really love. And it also is my meditation room, if you can believe that.
Well, I have certain size steaks I cook, and I have a handgun that I can measure the temperature of the skillet before I put it
Hmm.
on. I've
Right.
never mastered searing the outside, putting it in the oven for whatever. That part I've never mastered, but I've never actually tried it more than a couple times. So I'm still on that, what do I need to do? But I've gotten down really well if I know how thick it is. I look at the clock, I know how many minutes on each side, boom, it
Right.
comes out, and exactly the way my wife and I love to eat it. And so, but if I have something that's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, or maybe a different cut of meat, uh, I use a thermometer and I stick it in there until I get to the temperature that I want. Take it off, let it rest, etc.
Okay.
Do you use thermometers for your?
Absolutely.
Tell me about
Especially,
how you use
yeah.
yours.
Well, especially with fowl, with chicken or turkey, super duper important. If you're buying good cuts of meat and they're organic, if you cook them a little on the rare side, I'm not talking raw, but rare side, I think that it's okay to eat them. I mean, nutritionally, it works as far as not charcoaling the meat till it becomes charcoal, which really isn't good for you. Um, but I think that I do use a thermometer, and I have one of those. It opens. It's digital, and it has this little prong that opens up, and you point it into the fattest part of whatever you're cooking, and that will let you know what the temperature is. I also use it for baking. Baking, usually, if I'm baking something like muffins or a quiche, I will use a toothpick to stick it in. It's an old fashioned testing way, and it works. But as far as temperatures, I do measure the temperatures, especially with something like chicken and turkey, the fowl especially. You don't want to eat pink chicken.
What about sous vide? Is that something you do or have done?
I have done it. I don't have my own sous vide mechanism. Um, the only thing that bothers me about sous vide is that you put things in a plastic bag. And plastic is notorious, most of it. I'm not sure about the sous vide bags if they're specially made, but it's notorious for leaching whatever you call them, PFCAs. They're not good for you, whatever it is. The stuff in the plastic isn't good. Uh, and I try very hard to store everything that I have in glass. I have a collection of large, small, and medium glass jars and containers. Um, because glass is inert. It does not leach any kind of chemicals into the food that you store, and especially when you're heating.
That was interesting. Anyway, so I was on one of the cooking shows the other night, and the guy was very adamant about using the industrial, the restaurant quality storage containers
Mm-hmm.
rather than just something you get from Tupperware or at Walmart or whatever. And so we happened to be going by a place. I said, Marilyn, let's just stop by and see what they got. So we picked up some, and I started using them. They're much thicker.
Yes.
They're much they're I don't have all the sizes I need, but at least I started and said, okay, this sounds like a pretty good way of doing things because we have more storage containers than the law allows, and it's starting to a point where it's really difficult sometimes to put all that stuff away because I can't remember how it went in there before I took it out.
Yeah, labels help. I agree with you there. Um, One of the things I started doing was collecting the Pyrex or the borosilicate. Now they're coming out with borosilicate, which is chemically, it's a different glass that is actually stronger, I believe, and is less conducive to having anything leach. I don't think that Pyrex leaches because you can use it for hot or cold. But basically, if I'm storing something that's cold and is supposed to be cold and eaten cold, I might use some of the Tupperware because I don't have to heat it. But we do have a plethora of Tupperware. But I also have collected, and I'm constantly collecting glass containers with the tops, the sealing top. It's very important. And it's one of the things that I do is explain to people when I'm teaching them, about cooking and about eating right, is explain the difference between storage methods. You can store stuff that'll go bad in 2 days, or you can store it like fresh vegetables, for example. Greens, absolutely. Leafy greens. I just bought a whole bunch of organic dandelion greens that I use in my smoothies. And you've got to wash them carefully. I use a veggie wash. It's an organic veggie wash. And then rinse carefully. And then I dry them either in a lettuce spinner. That was my gift to myself for the last holiday, Christmas. I bought a new lettuce spinner, and it works. And you dry the vegetables as much as you can, and you put a little bit of paper toweling in there to collect any condensation. And I buy those green bags. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them in some of the stores. They do work. They keep produce and especially greens fresher longer. And so my leeks, everything. I do recommend when you buy a bunch of produce, wash it, clean it, dry it, and store it when you get it home. Yes, it takes time. It takes about an hour for most of the stuff when I come home with bags full, but then it's ready. And I have no complaints about, oh, darn, now I have to wash it in the middle of a recipe. It's already done. So it cuts down on your work time in the kitchen and your prep time. So, and it keeps things fresher.
I started doing a lot of mise en place over the last couple of years where everything's sitting there ready to go.
Yeah.
And I'll generally, in fact, before the show, I took some stuff out of the refrigerator because I like to have a lot of the stuff come to room temperature first rather than just take it straight out of the refrigerator, throw it on the stove. I don't like using the microwave, but I do use it periodically. It's not one of my preferred methods to cook, but I will buy stuff on sale, bring it home and vacuum pack it, write what it is on the outside and the date.
Yes.
And we've had some steaks that were over a year that we've had in the deep freeze. It's a pretty good deep freeze. I take them out, and they are just like I bought them at the store. It's amazing when you vacuum seal something how long it can be preserved. But sometimes you get something. Oh, what is this? And so I started writing the name of it on the outside. Yeah, it's a steak, but is it a strip steak or is what?
You're right.
Tell me when you started getting really, really interested in nutrition.
Oh gosh. Well, I was certified since 1999. So going back to 1990, whatever, and my kids were growing up. Actually, they were the last one left in 92. But in order to feed them, and I get ribbed from both of them. I used to feed them fish sticks because I was in a hurry when they were little. And then of course, we had a lot of fresh food to go with it. We always had salads and we always had a fresh vegetable. But I get my son kibitzes with me, especially because he's incredible. Well, both of them are incredible chefs, my son and daughter. But the interest in food was sparked just because I started understanding the difference between eating a fish stick and eating a fresh piece of fish and, using herbs and butter and real food with it. And that just kind of started the trip. And my grandmother, God bless her, may she rest in peace, was phenomenal in the kitchen. She made everything from briskets to her famous stuffed cabbage that none of us, not any of her three daughters and none of us grandkids, could ever reproduce. And it was absolutely phenomenal. So I just got into it and got my degree as a certified nutritionist in 1999, which took 3 years of study and many 3-hour exams to pass. And I keep looking. Everything changes, as you know, and it also changes in the area of nutrition because we went through, I think it was the late 60s or early 70s when eggs were supposed to be not good for you because there was a whole thing about the cholesterol in the yolk. And then the egg got redeemed a couple of decades from then, and now you can eat eggs. But it goes through cycles, and more discoveries are being made, which is very interesting as far as what vitamins do, what minerals do, and how we really should be supplementing our bodies, even if we're eating good organic foods because of the spraying. You may get something from an organic farm, but there may be a farm next to it that isn't practicing the same kind of fertilization and preservation or so forth. And so it's really good, I believe, to supplement with good quality supplements. I managed a department in a large chain of grocery stores for a while, And I saw the difference between these supplements and this bottle over here. And when you really delve into what's actually in the supplement that you're getting, and you know that, Red, from your research, that it pays to look, because you may be eating cheap stuff and you're throwing your money away and you get expensive urine. Or you can get a supplement that will actually supplement, not be an only meant, the food that you're eating and help prevent disease, hopefully.
Yeah, one of the things that was a bad or taboo, I guess, was saturated fats back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
because coconut oil and red palm oil are saturated fats. They automatically were included in the list.
Yeah.
And as we know nowadays, they're a vegetable saturated fat is totally different than an animal saturated fat. So, but anyway, I did get a comment from one of the audience watchers. Where do you buy your glass storage containers?
Oh, they're available in many places, even your grocery stores. I know HEB carries them here in Texas. Kroger carries them. Target, they carry the Pyrex, and what's the other one? The
Corning?
glass. Corning. I like the Pyrex, and there's another one, but you can find them in most of your big box stores. Will have, even Walmart carries them.
Okay.
And just look for the glass containers and make sure you tap them. Make sure they're glass, because sometimes the plastic will look like glass, but it isn't.
You're a speaker and you speak on food, nutrition, and things like that. What is your favorite topic to talk about?
Oh my. Mindfulness,
Okay.
eating mindfully, and being aware of what you're putting in your mouth, and also on your body, because a lot of, well, our skin is our largest organ, and it absorbs, whether it's absorbing something that's good in the way of a cream, a moisture cream or a sunblock type cream. And the fact that everything we touch influences what gets into our body, but especially the food, and being mindful of, for example, you get a great big wonderful bag at a large store that sells things wholesale of chips, and they're great because they're multigrain and they're gluten-free and they're blah, blah. They have all the attributes of being healthful for you, okay? And then you sit down and you start eating them out of the bag, and by the time you end up with, before you read the label, what should have been maybe a handful, maybe 11 crackers, for example, you've probably swallowed 3 times that. So I suggest doing something like, take that bag of crackers, put them in a little bowl, what you want to nibble on, fine. Put the rest of them away, because on the label in the back, the calories and the ingredients, for the most part, are listed, and the percentage of sugar, salt, possibly saturated fat, and now they have to list potassium, which is good for people with kidney problems. Look for low numbers in the potassium department. But those things, that 180 calories is not for the whole bag. That's for one serving. And usually each of the labels will say however many calories it is. It's for one serving, maybe 2 servings, and lists how many whatevers are in those servings. So that's one of the things that I am adamant about. Read the labels, but carefully, with the awareness that it's not the whole cotton picking bag or jar. It's for one serving.
So you don't wash the chips before you eat them?
Not maybe in some hummus, but
Red wine, maybe. I don't know.
maybe.
So you, a few years ago, wanted to become an author. Tell us about that journey.
Well, thanks to Red, I made it. And it's funny because I struggled with the title for a while, and I'm a very positive person. I do believe in, well, first of all, your thoughts create reality, and they are things. So if you're going to create, make sure your thoughts are positive. And I wanted something that wasn't a diet book, that spoke to having fun with food. And so I said, yes, you can eat well and eat right. So the book, thank you very much, Mr. Red. Has a lot of recipes in it. And after each recipe, by the way, there's some blank pages where if the person working with the recipe wants to change something in the recipe, they can note it down. And it's also big print, so it's easy to read. And of course, the spiral, and I've noticed some other books very recently are coming out with the spiral because you open it and it's easy to lay back or lay flat. It's got some food history and it has some anecdotes. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of things you can do with kids in there besides help them learn how to clean up the kitchen when they're finished eating. Let me see if I can find those. There's a couple of pictures of food animals, and I gave permission to people for using the book or reading the book to play with their food. Here we go. Here's a hummingbird. And it's made from a pepper and some celery leaves. And then these I did the other day. I actually posted them online. I took some Brussels sprouts and some cloves, and I made a little bowl full of Brussels sprouts. And then I did a recipe that put them in the pan and made them edible. But that's fun. You know, I want people to have fun with food and understand it doesn't have to be a chore to fix food.
Yeah. A long time ago, probably more than 20 years ago, I used to make silly gooses out of food because I got one of these food carving books and the tools that went with it. And the silly goose was one that I really liked to make, and I made dozens and dozens of them. But they're there for parties and things like that. But you also, as part of your chef business, you cater occasionally, whether it's individually or to groups. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into catering and what is there for somebody who's thinking about catering? What do they really need to know? What's important?
I have a good caterer I recommend. Catering is tough. If you're going to prepare something, one or two dishes, and take them to someone's home for, a potluck, say, great. Catering, you have to really understand how to season for the general public, for one thing. How to keep things, if you're going to make them spicy, you have to warn them because a lot of people don't like spicy particularly. There's also the issues of gluten sensitivities, dairy sensitivities, which are unfortunately, I think, more involved with the people's individual microbiomes, what's going on in your gut, rather than the food in particular, although some of the grains, I think, have been adulterated as well as some of the foods. But that's another subject. Catering, I kind of backed into, but it didn't last long. What I really did, and I'm doing again, is prepare some meals for people in my kitchen and take them to them. Other than that, I do go into people's homes as part of the Chefs for Seniors program and cook within their own kitchen. And I purchase the ingredients and then I cook the meals for them and we store them. And they have meals for several days or a week or so. But I really prefer I'm happy to bring something to your home. If you want me to fix something and bring it, I will happily do that. But catering on a large scale, I have a really good caterer in Houston I would recommend.
There are a lot of hacks to various parts of our lives. And just as a health hack or whatever else, I'm sure there's probably cooking prep hacks or things that make things much easier to do because we never thought about it before.
Sure.
Or never seen it before. Do you have some favorite food hacks or preparation hacks or cooking hacks that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, just a couple. Well, first of all, I mentioned earlier, bring things home, wash them, put them away, store them carefully, leave out what you're going to use for that evening or whatever. The other thing is this, and this is kind of fun, Red. You know, when you use orange or lemon zest and you have to get that good old zester out and watch out not to zest your fingers. I suggest taking your lemon zest and orange zest in little glass jars and fill up the jar if you can, zest a couple of oranges, after washing them, of course, and drying them. Um, Zest them, put them in the glass jars, seal them tightly, and freeze them. So that if a recipe calls for lemon zest and oops, we don't have any lemons, go to your freezer, get out that zest, and there you got it. And those are two things that I think are really important. Um, there's a bunch of just little things that people can do. Cutting things apart into serving sizes that you want to use, for example, like your steaks, and seal them. And by the way, buying one of those sealing machines is an excellent expenditure. I really think it gets, especially if you're buying for a family, since you can freeze dry everything, or seal them. You can seal them dry and you can seal them wet, but they are sealed, and then label them and you can freeze them. Um, those are several things that I think make life a lot easier in the kitchen. And have your knives sharpened. Have them sharp so they're sharp when you want to use them. And when you finish using something, if you've done a lot of cutting with it, wash it, clean it, sharpen it, and then put it away.
Do you use, when you're doing zesting of a lemon, do you hold the zester stable and then run the lemon down it, or do you hold the lemon stable and run the zester down it?
For years, you're going to laugh. I love my clients. I have a couple of senior clients that are a hoot. One in particular, she becomes my sous chef at 86. I love it. She's wonderful. And I used to take the zester and hold it over something and take the lemon or orange on top and put it over a bowl. That's messy. And what she did one day, and I watched her, was she took the zester and she went like this on top, and all that wonderful zest collected in that little trough that's on the top of the zester, and the light bulb went on. Because it's not messy, and you have it all collected where you need it, and then you can carefully put it into the little jar for storage or use it. Thank you. Good question. Hold the zester so that the fruit's underneath it and zest.
Yeah, I saw that on
playing a violin.
I saw that on TV, and I had to change because I was doing like you did. It was a mess. You had to get a bigger bowl. But once I started doing it the other way, okay, I do part of this, dump it in there. And,
Yeah.
and it's just so much easier. And it really does reduce the ability to cut yourself. I mean, I'm sure it's still
Yes.
possible, but you got to be very, very careful with that. But that's one that I think from somebody who's not an experienced cook, you just pick one of those things up and you start using it intuitively, and it may not necessarily always be the right way to use it.
Right. Yep.
Also, chef show. Go ahead.
One thing I want to mention: sharp knives are easier to use than dull knives, even with children. And if you're teaching a 3-year-old how to use a knife in your kitchen, and if you get a bench and they want to cook, get them a knife. Get one of those little ceramic ones. They're either white or I think black blades. Did that with my grandkids. My son and daughter did it with their kids. You teach a child how to use a knife and how to hold their fingers. They get it. They're not dumb. They understand. And using a sharp knife and the correct knife for what you're cooking. For example, if you're boning a chicken, you need a thin knife, but it's got to be sharp. And if you're chopping up something, you either need a chef's knife or one of those wonderful new knives with, I don't remember what they're called, but they have dents in them. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I don't. They have an official name, but I don't remember what it is. But sharp knives matter.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is one of my best sources for information when I want to know something. And sometimes I'll watch 4, 5, 6, 7 different videos so I can get an idea of what options I have with whatever I want to do. And sometimes I'll take, well, that person started out, like Laura Vitale has a really good recipe for German apple strudel. Well, that was a good place to start, but I had to get other ingredients in there, and she does it with puff pastry and not with phyllo, but she tells you that up in front. But I've experimented enough, but I really like Chef Jean-Pierre. That's probably one of my favorite as far as cooking chefs go. Do you have one that you prefer you'd like to share with the audience?
Not particularly. I've watched several of the shows on TV. I don't usually go to YouTube unless I'm desperate to do something. I like experimenting personally, but I have watched, actually, I like listening to Milk Street. And I've watched Milk Street several times with, what's his name? Francis. And he's excellent. I think his shows are excellent. And the recipes and the people that he brings on, there's a lot of information that he shares on there besides cooking tips. And usually it's not only his cooking tips, but his guests come on with cooking tips that I find are very informative and very different. He brings in people from all walks of food.
Yeah, I have a
Make
couple
sense?
dozen. I have a couple dozen magazines on Milk Street. I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen the TV show. It's something I'll have to go check out.
Oh yeah, there is one, and there also you can watch the replays.
We're getting toward the end of the show, um, and I know that you do a lot of different things. So, who is a good client for you, and what is the best method for them to contact you?
Well, the best method would be to either, I don't mind phone calls. I have a local Houston phone number. It's 832-308-0688. Um, I also have rickiskitchen.net, which is RICKIS kitchen, KITCHEN.net. You can contact me there. I will. You can put your name and your email in there. I will get back with you. And there's a place for questions. There's also a free book on there. If you're interested in my ebook, it's on there for free. And you can also get a discount on the paperback or the spiral on there. But the best way really is through the internet, and I will contact you back. I'm on Facebook as well, and I think my information's on Facebook, Red, but I'm not. I have to go look and make sure. But the phone number would be great, 832-308-0688.
Okay, so you got rickyskitchen.net, and you have
Yes.
your phone number. And what is the real value you bring to a potential client?
Hopefully improvement to their health and enjoyment of food.
So you're enjoying the food because it really tastes good and it's really nutritious.
It's really nutritious, and I will work with, I know a lot of people lately do not like to cook, especially the younger generations. And I would love to do some classes with them. I had 5 boys, junior high school boys, and 4 girls in a class that I did 2 weeks ago at one of the high schools here. They were fantastic. They loved it. They asked questions. They literally ate up the food and loved it. And they were fabulous to work with. So kids need to know how to cook and what to look for. So that would be my newest thing to do. And I do work with the other end of the spectrum with the senior generations and helping them really get back to eating properly so that they don't have to take so many medications. If we can reduce or even eliminate a medication through eating properly, then I feel I've done my job.
Fantastic. Ricki, thank you so very much for coming on the show today. I really and truly enjoyed it. And I'll have to start looking for other chefs because that's an area that I love myself.
I
And
know.
I think just a lot of good information can be put out because it's something we could use every single day.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much, Red. And you are a marvelous cook. I've eaten some of your food as well. And keep up the good work. Thank you for having me.
we'll catch you later on. Thank you again, Ricki. Very shortly here in about 18 minutes, the Talking Heads part of USA Global TV and Radio Network will begin. We started a journey in December about how to prepare for the optimal health journey in 2024. And we've covered mindset, and we've covered getting started, and we've gone through a whole bunch of things. We're finishing up on expectations and starting to get into some of the real, where the rubber meets the road, the real nitty gritty things about what should you be doing right now so that it lasts later in the year. And we're just about to the end of it. It's been more of an extended show. Most of the shows are 6 shows, occasionally 8. But right now we're getting probably down to the last couple of shows. And so if you want information, it's available on YouTube, on the USA Global TV playlist. Please go there and look for Talking Heads, or if you want to see some of our former guests on the Wise Ones, again, all of the archive programs are there. And with that, I am going to bid you adieu, and hopefully you can join me in a few minutes. If not, look for the recording. Take care, y'all, and have a wonderful day.